it's weird talking with a mask. I'm used to being remote and not having to talk to anybody. So talking to everybody just into the microphone. So it's weird being in person. And I guess we're going to be eating here in a few minutes anyway. So, I changed my talk title just slightly to being a more creative engineer, because I figure everybody is creative in some way. But let's go to the next slide. Do I have a clicker? Does that go? There. All right. So why should we be a more creative engineer? And as Tariq has shown in the past, he's talked about how the robots are taking over. He's done presentations at PNSQC in the past, talking about the robots taking over. We're not robots. We're not going to be able to beat the robots at the robot game, but we can solve problems. And so why should we be more creative? Well, because solving problems is a creative activity, we can also add value to the company by doing it that way. It raises engagement. If people can spend more time being creative at work, they are more engaged. And also, it's just more fun to be creative. So, given that, let's think about what is creativity. And most people might think of it, writers, painters, directors, Beethoven composing music, and think of that as creativity. But at work as knowledge workers, we are also being creative all the time. And in addition to being engineering solutions, we're telling stories, we're making pictures, we're imagining outcomes as we create the vision for a project, for example. And if you think of who is creative, this is a quote from Elvis Costello. It's kind of funny because he's saying, he works at what he does. He's been writing songs for almost 50 years, and he still thinks of himself basically as a worker, working at the songs, and then moments of inspiration. So that's kind of the ultimate of a 99%, 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration, or 99% perspiration. Let's see. But the problem is, a lot of times at work, people will come upon the first solution, and then they'll just stop. And so, being creative is really just going beyond coming to the first solution, and exploring other ways to come up with solutions. Usually, engineers work on convergent thinking. There are different ways of thinking of creativity. And convergent thinking is one way where you just assemble all the facts, and then you kind of synthesize them to come up together and come up with a solution. And you say, this is the solution, I know it. And that works a lot of times, but not all the time. Some other ways of thinking creatively is lateral thinking. And this is really just what I'd call thinking wider. Edward de Bono has a book called 6 Thinking Hats, and I should have put in the copyright or trademark or whatever on there. But the 6 thinking hats are ways to think of a problem from different viewpoints. There's a creative viewpoint, the heart, which is the feelings, the optimist, which thinks of the best possible solution, which is really, usually project manager is trying to think of the best possible solution. The judge, the factual one, and the conductor, who's more of the manager kind of hat. But there are other ways also to simplify de Bono's book. You can think of explaining to a duck. I don't know if anybody's ever heard that.
Yes.
When you encounter a problem that you don't really know, one way you can do it is if you explain the problem to the duck. In formulating the problem, you sometimes come upon the solution. Another way to do that is think about other people, talking to other people. Even though we're often working remotely nowadays, formulate the problem for your subject matter expert and go and talk to them and say, here's the problem. And even if they don't really understand it, if it's a technical problem, they might not understand it, but you can always, in the process of formulating the problem, sometimes they'll offer up solutions to you that make it easier for you. Or talk to a team member, or this is the best one. Imagine that you're talking to your grandparents who have no idea what you actually do at work, and you're trying to explain exactly what the problem is that you're trying to get to a solution for. And you know, they might act as proxy for either the heart or the optimist, or you know, it depends on what your grandmother and grandfather or your parents are. Maybe they're extreme judges and they're like, oh, that'll never work. Some kata that you can do, some exercises you can do to encourage lateral thinking is sign up for newsletters that are tangential to what you're interested in, but you know, the newsletter kind of sends you a stream of information. You never know what's coming your way. Other things you can do is swap roles with someone for a day or for a week or a sprint. Maybe you want to sit in the tester seat if you're normally a developer, or a developer seat if you're normally a tester. You can do a presentation or just volunteer for an organization that's not quite part of work. Like you can, there are lots of community open source projects that you can volunteer for. Another way to think of things differently is called divergent thinking. And the framework for divergent thinking is, I don't know if you can see this here, reserve judgment, generate a lot of ideas, embrace the strange. I have a pig with wings here, and then combine the ideas in unusual ways. So that is a good idea for divergent thinking. One book on divergent thinking is the Eureka Effect. It's got a lot of brain teasers. I kind of enjoy reading through the book and thinking about ways to generate pathways to ideas that aren't just straight answers. Another thing to increase divergent thinking is create some arbitrary constraints. For example, the person up in the box, let's say that this week, you're only going to test one thing. How can you test that one thing and focus on that? Another thing might be to consider that you're an ally. For example, if you're working on your system and you're testing that you can't, let's say that you can't understand, you can't read the small print, so that you'd set your monitor smaller and test it that way. Or other things is try it with no internet or without using a mouse or a keyboard, for example. Some exercises for divergent thinking are just, I like a practice thing that we used to do was test this button. And we got the team together and we were just like, okay, this is a button. You push it, it does something. How many different ways can you test this button? Or another thing is, how many things can you come up with for uses for a paperclip? And then down the bottom, I have a couple just fun things that I do with some almost nonsensical frameworks, like inside, outside, upside down, or something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue. And then I'd use those to generate ideas. Like, for example, in this talk, I was thinking, okay, how can I turn this talk upside down? Usually I don't really like PowerPoint. So I, instead of generating a PowerPoint and then making sketch notes, I just made a bunch of sketch notes, and now I'm presenting it as if it was a PowerPoint. And what's next? So I was talking about constraints, or generating arbitrary constraints. And some of this thing, musicians do not record nature sounds, they translate the feelings about nature into musical notes. And the same thing with painters. Painters don't paint exactly what the photo is. They paint representation using a visual vocabulary. And really, we're, as knowledge workers, we're doing that all the time. We have a real world system that we're translating into a model that is a computer system. So we're living with constraints every day. And thinking about that, really that is part of artistry, is taking the real world system and representing it as the model. One other creativity enhancement is level up. You know, take breaks, go for a walk, schedule some slack time. I like to go for a walk with the team. Outside, you're less likely to get COVID, I guess. Now sleep, and then let your mind wander. That's the guy up in the corner. In this case, the system 2 guy is wandering around and working while you're asleep. For example, one time I broke my keyboard. I couldn't figure out how to put the keys back on. I went to bed. I was totally worn out. Woke up in the morning. All of a sudden, I knew how to put the keyboard back together. So the system 2 had solved it while I was asleep. Bottom line is we're not robots. We need to have a way to get the things out of our head into a creative mode, share them with others, and then iterate on them quickly, and then you can boost up your creativity. I don't know how much time I have left. I think I'm almost done. So when to start being creative, you can do it right now or pretty soon. You can practice at work. I wrote the word kata up there, which is a Japanese word for the way of doing, which is kind of like doing an exercise. Make a set of goals. You can talk with your team members about how you can maybe start a book club on reading the Eureka Effect, for example. Or you can also consider giving a presentation. Here's a shameless plug. I'm giving a presentation for PNSQC. It's a good way to become more creative. And some references. And thank you. I hope people can see that.
Thank you, Moss. Let me fix this problem with about this the participants, and then we will load up the next presentation here.
Well, Moss, did you do all those sketches on your own? I mean, that's pretty awesome.
Yes, I did.
Wow. I mean, I saw the, especially the one of the guys sleeping in bed. I mean, that was pretty cool.
So what do I do?
Definitely have a lot of talent when it comes to sketching. That's really cool. You know, one of the things you talked about was going for walks. And I think that's a really great idea, not only to do by yourself, but to do with others, sometimes with even no purpose at all. Just stuff comes out, and it's really amazing how doing something together, whether it be, you know, walking or working on a car engine, even if you're not talking with each other, communication happens. So it's really interesting.